Okay, so I will quickly go through each of the people on the list so you know what's ahead of you, and it'll give you an idea of why people were included or why they were not. Elvis Presley, number 25. Vocalist, the reason he's on the list is he has the 3 biggest selling gospel albums of all time. All 3 of them won Grammys, and I think he has sold more gospel songs in terms of units sold than anybody else in history. I could be wrong on that. I think I'm right depending on how you define gospel. But when you say gospel music, some people immediately think of Aretha Franklin or Mahalia Jackson. They think of black gospel music. Other people, you say gospel music and they think of Philip Bliss or Amy Grant or the Gaithers. So it depends how you define gospel. Philip Bliss is next, a composer and music publisher. He wrote several hymns that you still know today, and our hope is we're going to sing one of them for you before we're done here today, maybe at the very end. Mahalia Jackson is on there strictly as a vocalist. Some people think she's the greatest gospel singer of all time. She certainly has a pretty resume. If I had her resume, I would be on the list. Thomas A. Dorsey, composer and music publisher. Bill and Gloria Gaither, composers, musicians, producers of gospel music events. Amy Grant, the real reason she's on there isn't because I like Amy Grant so much or I secretly listen to her CDs when I'm driving around, which I actually don't. The real reason she's on there is because you can make a case she started contemporary. Johnny Cash produced like 10, 12 gospel albums. Again,
I grew up on all of them.
with the exception of Elvis, he's probably sold more gospel songs than anybody else. Plus, he had that wonderful song, "And the Preacher Said." Did any of you remember that? He's singing, and then Billy Graham starts preaching, and Jesus said, and then Cash comes back singing. I'll play it for you. James Montgomery and Henry Purcell are both composers from a couple hundred years ago, both Anglican. It's a shame Gene's not here. James Montgomery really was a hymn writer as well as a music publisher. Henry Purcell wrote liturgical music for the formal Anglican service. Mozart is number 16, not because of the well-tempered clavier, which was secular, but because of the... So why is Calvin on there? Was Calvin a great musician? But Calvin did have a huge impact on at least the music in a Reformed church, which is why it was so slow and funereal. And also the Genevan Psalter, of where we get what today we call the doxology came out of that. Calvin really started the Geneva Psalter, and he saw it through. Felix Mendelssohn is on there because he wrote several big pieces that are still performed today. The most famous one's probably Elijah, but he wrote other ones. Our choir has done a piece from Elijah recently, He Watching Over Israel. Some of you familiar with that? He watching over Israel, slumbers not or sleep. How many know that? Few. Who else we have? John Newton. John Newton wrote what is probably the most popular hymn of all time called Amazing Grace. But he's not on the list because of Amazing Grace. He's on the list because of the amazing gospel music publishing that he did. Plus, he has an interesting backstory. Ira D. Sankey, also a composer and music publisher in America in the 19th century. So he also helped Fanny Crosby, kind of gave wide distribution to her music. Isaac Watts, we're probably all familiar with the exception of Charles Wesley, probably the person that in your typical hymn book you'll find the most hymns by, so he was a famous composer. Frances Jane Crosby, Fanny Crosby, wrote 6,500 hymns. Second only to Charles Wesley. And probably, I think 10 of those hymns are in our hymn book over there. There might even be more in the hymn book that's in here. Billy Graham, number 9, is producer of the Billy Graham Crusades. Has spread gospel music all over the world. And gave George Beverly Shea, if some of you are familiar with him, he was the soloist in the Billy Graham Crusades. Gave him a wide audience. George Frederick Handel is on there because obviously a famous writer of Christian music, but if you want to get down to the basics, the reason he's on there is because he wrote a little oratorio called The Messiah. And I quote Bill Baker in the book, William Baker, the William Baker Choral Foundation. He said, to many people, it will be the only classical music concert they ever go to will be a performance of Handel's Messiah. And that by itself is a reason to have him on the list. Number 7, John and Charles Wesley. I always put them together so that I have an extra space for somebody else. Composers, they really weren't twins or Siamese twins, but I always put them together. Wesley was the great composer. John wrote some songs too, but John really was the publisher. And he used to correct his brother's work. There still exist today original manuscripts of songs that Charles Wesley wrote, and John Wesley would write comments in the margin. I don't think this is theologically correct. This is misleading. So only the brother of Charles Wesley, probably his wife, could have gotten away with questioning Charles Wesley's
Mama
or
was.
his mom, Suzanne. Giovanni Pierluigi da Palestrina, generally considered to be the greatest composer in history. Gregory the Great, of course, is on the list. I know there's some controversy as to what his involvement really was in terms of Gregorian plain chant. I used the Catholic Encyclopedia as the final authority, and I love the way they phrase it. Responsible for a certain final arrangement of the Roman chant. So for that by itself, the plain chant became the standard music of Christianity for the next 1,000 years. That is why Gregory the Great is number 5. Johann Sebastian Bach, composer, and I also heard he was a pretty good organist. He is on a list as what I consider to be the greatest composer of sacred music in history. Most of his music was sacred music as opposed to secular music. Saint Benedict, author of the Rule of Benedict, which specified how music would be applied in a monastery for the next 1,000 years. And we will lovingly look at a section of the Rule of Benedict that I had never mentioned in class before. So I know it'll be something to keep you coming, but I know you're going to be excited about it. We're going to go over them. Martin Luther is number 2. You guys sang hymns this morning in church. The reason is because of Martin Luther. He totally changed the face of Christian music. Prior to Martin Luther, the only people who sang in church were the monks or clerics or sometimes paid singers or musicians. Always up in the front. The congregation was never involved. Because of Luther, that all changed, and it changed quickly, and it swept over Christianity. And we're still feeling it today. And plus he wrote the greatest hymn of all, The Mighty Fortress is Our. Number 1 is King David, who supposedly played a mean harp, but he's honored not because of his harp playing, but because he wrote, about half of the Psalms, and the Psalms formed the basis of Christian music for the next 1,500 years, and still obviously influence them